The day my world was incinerated began with a handshake that felt like a nail in my coffin. "Jake, you're a family man," my boss said, not meeting my eyes. "This isn't personal, it's just restructuring." After 12 years at Titan Forge Manufacturing, my position as a lead floor supervisor was restructured into oblivion. The cardboard box in my hands containing a worn-out thermos, photo of my kids, and a cheap plaque for Employee of the Month I'd won 5 years ago felt like the sum total of my life's work. I drove home through the rain-slicked streets of my Pittsburgh neighborhood, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The familiar rows of brick houses, once a symbol of stability, now felt like a taunt. How would I tell Sarah? We'd been fighting about money for months, her frustration a constant low hum in our home. "You need to aim higher, Jake," she'd say, her voice laced with a disappointment that cut deeper than any factory floor insult. "We can't live on good enough forever." I walked into our small 2-story home, the scent of lemon polish failing to mask the tension. Sarah was waiting in the living room. Her eyes, a piercing blue I once got lost in, flicked from my face to the box in my arms. The hope in them died instantly, replaced with a chilling resolve. "They let you go, didn't they?" she stated, her voice flat. "Cutbacks, Sarah. I'll find something else, I promise." The words sounded hollow even to me. "Something else. What, Jake? Stocking shelves? Delivering pizzas? We're drowning now. The mortgage, the car payments, Liam's braces, your something else won't even keep the lights on." I tried to reach for her, but she stepped back as if my touch was poison. "Sarah, please, we'll get through this. We always do." "No, Jake, I always do. I'm the one who budgets, who juggles, who lies to the kids about why we can't go to the movies. I'm tired of carrying you." She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold and final, a verdict delivered from a bench. "You're a failure, Jake. You're worthless. I'm taking the kids. I'm taking Liam and Chloe, and I'm leaving." Those words, "you're worthless," hit me with more force than the pink slip. They didn't just dismiss my job, they dismissed my soul. Before I could form a response, she was barking orders. "Liam, Chloe, pack a bag, we're going to Aunt Melissa's." My son Liam, 10 years old with my curious eyes and his mother's stubborn chin, appeared at the top of the stairs. "Dad, what's going on?" "Nothing, buddy," I managed, my voice cracking. "Just go with your mom for a little while." My daughter Chloe, only 7, clung to her stuffed rabbit, her wide eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Daddy, are you coming?" The ache in my chest was a physical wound. "Not tonight, sweetheart. I'll see you soon." The lie tasted like ash. I stood frozen in the doorway as Sarah shepherded them into her SUV. She didn't look back. Liam did, his small face pressed against the window, a silent question I had no answer for. The taillights disappeared into the gloom, and I was alone in the echoing silence of a house that was no longer a home. The walls felt like they were closing in. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled out the front door into the cool, damp night, no destination in mind. My mind was a vortex of self-loathing. "She's right. You failed. You're nothing. A worthless husband. A worthless father." I walked for what felt like hours, until my legs burned and the city lights blurred into streaks of color through my unshed tears. I found myself in a part of town I rarely visited, standing under the flickering neon sign of a 24-hour diner called the Starlight. It was a relic, wedged between a cash-for-gold store and a laundromat. Desperate for shelter from the storm inside my head, I pushed the door open. The air is thick with the smell of frying bacon and stale coffee. I slid into a cracked vinyl booth in the far corner, as far from the other late-night patrons as I could get. A waitress with a name tag that read "Flo" wordlessly poured me a cup of black coffee. I stared into the dark liquid, my reflection a grotesque caricature of the man I thought I was, tired, broken, defeated. I was so lost in my own despair that I didn't notice the old man until he was sliding into the seat across from me. He was weathered, his face a roadmap of hard-lived years, but his spine was straight, and his eyes held a sharp, unnerving intensity. "You look like you've seen a ghost, son." Or maybe you just became one. I looked up, startled and irritated. I'm not your son, and I just want to be left alone. He ignored me, his gaze steady. You look just like my boy, Michael. Same look in your eyes, right before he vanished. That was 35 years ago. A pang of sympathy cut through my self-pity. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not him. I know, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. But I see the same weight on you. The weight of a man who's been told he's nothing and is starting to believe it. He extended a gnarled but steady hand. Name's Silas. I hesitated, then shook it. Jake. Jake, he repeated as if testing the name. I built my life with these hands. Started with nothing, built a construction company from the ground up. I was so busy building walls for other people, I didn't see the ones I was putting up around my own family. I was hard on Michael, demanding. I thought I was teaching him strength. Turns out I was just teaching him how to leave. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The day he left, we had a fight. I told him he was weak, that he'd never amount to anything. Those were the last words I ever said to my son. His story was a mirror held up into my own failure. My wife, she said I was worthless. She took my kids. Silas nodded slowly. And now you're sitting here in this diner, deciding whether to prove her right. His words were a punch to the gut. What choice do I have? She's made up her mind. I've got nothing. You have a choice, Silas said, his voice hardening. You can let this break you, or you can let it forge you. You can crawl into a bottle and disappear, or you can stand up and fight for what's yours. He leaned in even closer, his eyes blazing with a fire that seemed to burn away the fog in my head. But if you walk away now, if you abandon those children, you will spend the rest of your life drowning in the same regret I am. It's a poison, Jake, and there's no antidote. He let that sink in, the silence between us heavier than any machine I'd ever operated. Then he spoke 5 words that would change the trajectory of my life, words that would become my battle cry. Don't abandon them like me. It was as if a circuit had been completed. A jolt of raw electric purpose surged through me. The self-pity evaporated, replaced by a cold, clear fury. Not at Sarah, not yet, but at the version of myself that had been ready to surrender. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. I write. My voice was different, steadier, stronger. Thank you, Silas. He gave a slow, approving nod. Go be the father your children need. And Jake, sometimes to protect the sheep, you have to become the wolf. I threw a 20 on the table, nodded at Silas, and strode out of the diner. The night air no longer felt hostile. It felt charged with possibility. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to fight. And I was going to win. I didn't go to my sister-in-law's house that night. A frontal assault without a plan was a fool's errand. Instead, I went home to my empty house. But for the first time, the silence wasn't oppressive. It was tactical. I poured my glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and started to think. Sarah thought she held all the cards, the kids, the moral high ground, my shattered confidence. But she had underestimated me. She had mistaken my kindness for weakness, my stability for complacency. Silas was right. It was time to become the wolf. The next morning, I called my younger brother, Marcus. Where I was steady and methodical, Marcus was a whirlwind of ambition and street smarts. He ran a successful, if not entirely conventional, auto body and custom detailing shop. He answered on the first ring. Jake, you hear from the Dragon Lady yet? was his typical greeting for Sarah. She left, Marcus. Took the kids. The line was silent for a moment. Oh, hell, man. I'm sorry. What are you going to do? I'm not going to roll over. I need your help. Anything. You name it. First, I need a job. Something that pays under the table for now. I need cash flow she can't touch. You got it. You could start in the shop tomorrow. You've got a backlog of electrical work. You were always better with wiring than any of my guys. Second, I continued, my voice cold. I need information. On Sarah? On everything. I need to know if there's something she's hiding. People don't make moves this drastic without a reason or without a safety net of their own. Marcus let out a low whistle. All right, big brother. Welcome to the fight. I've got a guy. Discreet. Next, I called my father, a retired master machinist named Arthur. He was a man of few words, but each one carried weight. Son, he grunted after I told him the situation. Your mother is worried sick. Tell Mom I'm okay. Actually, tell her I'm better than okay. Dad, I need to get into your old workshop, the one with the heavy-duty tools. The one in the barn? It's full of rust and memories, Jake. I'm going to clean out the rust, and I'm going to make some new memories. I've got an idea. It's yours, he said without hesitation. The code to the lock is your mother's birthday. My plan was taking shape. By day, I worked at Marcus's shop. My skilled hands quickly earned the respect of the younger mechanics. The work was dirty and physical, and it felt good. It was honest labor that left me too tired to feel sorry for myself. The cash payments went into a new, secret bank account. By night, I worked in my father's barn. It wasn't just a workshop, it was a sanctuary. I started by cleaning, sorting through decades of tools and scrap metal, and I began to build. I'd always had a knack for invention, for seeing new uses for old things, but I'd buried that part of myself under the monotonous routine of the factory. Now, I let it run wild. My first project was for Liam. For years, he'd been fascinated by a particular discontinued line of action figures. The main villain, named Malgos, was impossibly expensive on the collector's market. Using scrap aluminum, a small forge I'd built from an old propane tank, and my father's precision tools, I began to sculpt. It wasn't just a toy, it was a piece of art, with articulated joints and a light-up weapon. It was a message. Your father can create what the world says is unattainable. My second project was for Chloe. She loved fairy tales. I built her a dragon's treasure chest from reclaimed oak and brass fittings. I installed a simple but elegant locking mechanism and lined it with purple velvet. It was a promise. I will guard your dreams and your treasures. Meanwhile, Marcus's guy, a perpetually bored-looking tech whiz named Leo, started digging. The initial report was infuriating, but predictable. Sarah was lawyering up, using the fact that I was recently unemployed to paint me as an unreliable provider. She was filing for full custody and exclusive use of the marital home. But then, Leo found something else. A pattern of withdrawals from our joint savings account starting 6 months ago. Small amounts at first, then growing larger. They were always cash, untraceable. Over $15,000 was missing. She's been planning this, I said to Marcus, the printout spread across his shop desk. Or she's got a habit. Gambling? Shopping? No, that's not Sarah. She's too controlled. This is calculated. A cold suspicion began to form in my gut. Leo, can you get into her email, her phone records? It'll cost you, and it's dicey. Do it. The answer came a week later. It wasn't gambling. It was a man. His name was David Croft. He was a mid-level executive at a rival manufacturing firm. A man Sarah had met at a Chamber of Commerce mixer I'd skipped to work overtime. Their texts, which Leo provided, were a sickening revelation. They weren't just love notes, they were a conspiracy. David, is he gone yet? I'm tired of waiting for you. Soon. He just got laid off. It's the final nail. My lawyer says it gives me everything. The house, the kids, everything. He's a deadbeat. He won't fight. He never does. Good. My offer on the new place is accepted. Plenty of room for us and the kids. We'll be a real family. The final text was from the day she left me. It's done. The worthless bastard is broken. I'm free. I read those words in the dim light of the barn, my hand shaking not with sadness, but with a rage so pure it was almost peaceful. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was a targeted demolition. She hadn't just called me worthless. She had conspired to make it true. She was planning to take my children and install this stranger as their new father, using my own misfortune as the weapon to do it. Silas's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes to protect the sheep, you have to become the wolf. I was no longer just fighting for my kids. I was going to war, and David Croft had just made himself a target. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and mine would be frozen solid. I wouldn't confront Sarah, not yet. Let her think she had won. Let her and David get comfortable in their new life. My revenge would not be a shout. It would be a silent, surgical strike that would collapse their world from the inside out. I needed two things: leverage and a masterpiece. The leverage came from David Croft. Leo dug deeper. David was slick, but he was sloppy. He had a taste for high-stakes poker games that he couldn't afford, and he was skimming money from his corporate expense account to cover his losses. It was embezzlement, plain and simple. Leo got me transaction records, doctored invoices, and even a few blurry photos from a clandestine game in a back room of a high-end club. It was a ticking bomb timer. The masterpiece was my true weapon. I stopped building toys and started building my future. For years, I'd had an idea for a revolutionary modular tool system for emergency responders, a single, customizable platform that could adapt to everything from a car crash to a structural collapse. I'd sketched it in notebooks I kept hidden in the barn, believing it was just a pipe dream. Now it was my salvation. I worked with a feverish intensity, fueled by rage and purpose. I used my severance pay to source high-grade titanium and advanced polymers. I built prototypes, tested them to destruction, and refined the designs. My father started showing up in the barn, not saying much, just watching, then rolling up his sleeves to help. His old-world craftsmanship with my innovative design was a powerful alchemy. One evening, Marcus came by holding the finished Malgos figure for Liam. It was menacing and beautiful, its details sharp and clean. "Jake, this is insane," he whispered. "You made this from scrap?" "It's a start," I said, not looking up at the hydraulic actuator I was machining for the Jaws of Life module. "This is more than a start, brother. This is a talent, a real marketable talent." While I built, I also played the perfect contrite father. I followed my lawyer's advice to the letter. I attended every court-mandated parenting class. I documented every single cent I earned and saved. I showed up for my visitation rights with Liam and Chloe, always on time, always present. I didn't badmouth Sarah. I just focused on them. I gave Liam the Malgos figure. His eyes went wider than I'd ever seen. "Dad, this is better than the real one. You made this?" "I told you I'd see you soon, buddy, and I keep my promises." I gave Chloe the treasure chest. She gasped and running her small hands over the smooth wood and cool brass. "For my special things?" she asked. "For your special things," I confirmed. "And to remind you that you are my treasure." The contrast was stark. At their mother's new fancy house with David, everything was pristine, expensive, and impersonal. With me in my small rented apartment and my father's magical workshop, they found creativity, authenticity, and a father who was suddenly powerfully alive. Sarah noticed the change. During one drop-off, she looked at me with narrowed eyes. "You seem different." I gave her a calm, neutral smile. "Therapy," I lied smoothly. "Just working on myself." She seemed to accept that, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. She thought I was finally admitting my flaws.
She had no idea I was sharpening my claws. After 6 months of relentless work, the responder rig was complete. It was a masterpiece of engineering, compact, powerful, and infinitely adaptable. I filed for a patent with the last of my secret savings. Then I called in a favor from an old Army buddy who now worked for the Pittsburgh Fire Department. He arranged a live demonstration. The fire chief and several department heads watched, skeptical at first, as I demonstrated how the single base unit could, in under 30 seconds, be configured into a spreader, a cutter, a ram, and a high-pressure airbag system. Their skepticism turned to shock, then to excitement. The efficiency and space-saving potential were a game-changer. The following week, I had a letter of intent from the city for a pilot program. The week after that, a venture capitalist who had heard whispers through Marcus's network offered me a 7-figure investment to start production. In less than a year, I had gone from worthless to the founder and CEO of my own company, Forge Tech Solutions. It was time. The final custody hearing arrived. Sarah walked into the courtroom on David Croft's arm, dressed in a sharp, expensive suit, a look of smug victory already on her face. Her lawyer began his opening statement, painting a devastating picture of me, the unemployed, unreliable husband, the financial drain, the man who had driven his stable wife into the arms of a more capable provider. I sat quietly beside my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Angela Costas, whom I'd hired with my new resources. I was dressed in a well-fitted suit of my own. I looked successful. I looked confident. I looked nothing like the man Sarah had described. When it was our turn, Angela stood. "Your Honor, my client does not deny that he suffered a significant professional setback. What he denies is that this defines him as a father. In fact, it liberated him to become the man he was always meant to be." She began to present our evidence. First, the financial records showing my steady income from my brother's shop and the prudent management of my resources. Then the character witnesses, my father, who spoke of my work ethic and dedication, Marcus, who testified to my integrity, and even the fire chief, who gave a stunning testimonial about my ingenuity and the life-saving potential of my invention. Sarah's smugness began to crack, replaced with confusion and then dawning horror. Then Angela played her ace. "Your Honor, we must also question the environment in the mother's home. She is cohabiting with a man, David Croft, whom she began an affair with while still married to my client." She entered the text messages into evidence. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Sarah's face went white. David Croft looked like he wanted to bolt from the room. "Furthermore," Angela continued, her voice cutting through the noise, "we have serious concerns about Mr. Croft's moral character and financial stability." She presented the evidence of his embezzlement. "This is not a stable or safe influence for children. This is a man engaged in active criminal fraud."
The judge, a stern-faced woman, slammed her gavel. "Order!" She fixed Sarah and David with a withering glare. "This is a most disturbing development." But the final blow was the most personal. Angela called me to the stand. "Mr. Miller, your ex-wife testified that you are worthless. How do you respond to that?" I looked directly at Sarah, my gaze steady and cold. "I respond by showing you what I built when I had nothing." I held up the responder rig prototype. "I built this. I built a company around it. I did it for my children, to show them that failure is an event, not a person. That when you get knocked down, you get back up." I then turned to the judge. "But more than that, I built a relationship with my children. I have been present for every visitation. I have supported them emotionally and financially. I have shown them love and consistency. My home is not as large as Miss Miller's, but it is built on a foundation of honesty and hard work, not deception and fraud." I look back at Sarah. I am not worthless. I am their father. There was nothing left to say. The judge's ruling was swift. Primary physical custody was awarded to me. Sarah was granted standard visitation contingent on her completing parenting classes. The judge also froze our remaining marital assets pending further investigation into the missing $15,000 and issued a stern warning to David Croft, informing him that a copy of the embezzlement evidence would be forwarded to his employer and the IRS. It was a total absolute victory. Outside the courthouse, the bright sunlight felt like a benediction. Sarah rushed out, tears of rage streaming down her face, followed by a pale and shaken David. "You bastard!" she screamed at me. "You planned this! You set us up!" I stopped and looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time since she'd left. The anger was gone, replaced with a profound, weary pity. "No, Sarah, you did this. You called me worthless, and I believed you for one night, but then I remembered who I was. You plotted and schemed, and in the end all you did was show the court and our children your true character. You didn't lose the kids today. You lost them the day you decided to betray their father." I turned my back on her and walked towards my father's truck, where Liam and Chloe were waiting, their faces full of a hope I hadn't seen in over a year. Later that week, I went back to the Starlight Diner. I needed to find Silas. I needed to thank him for showing me the path. I asked Flo, the same waitress, "The old man who used to come in here, Silas, do you know how I can find him?" She wiped down the counter, her expression softening. "Oh, honey, Silas Vapor, he was a regular for years. Such a sad story. His boy Michael ran away when he was 16. Silas looked for him for decades. He died about, 5 years ago now, liver cancer. He came in here every night until he couldn't anymore. Always sat in that corner booth, just staring out the window, waiting." A chill went down my spine. 5 years? I thanked her and walked to the corner booth. I sat down, the vinyl cracking under my weight. I placed my hand on the table where his had been. Whether he was a ghost, a guardian angel, or just a figment of my broken psyche, it didn't matter. His message was real. His warning had saved me. "I didn't abandon them, Silas. Thank you." I looked out the window at the city. No longer a place of defeat, but a landscape of possibility. I had my children. I had my purpose. The revenge was complete, but it was no longer what drove me. What drove me was the future I would build for my family, a future forged not in the fire of anger, but in the steady, enduring heat of a love that refuses to quit. The pawn became the king.